Tom, lots of balls up in the air today. Let's start off with that surprise announcement. I think it's fair to call it a surprise when Justin Trudeau gets up and says, oh, yeah, so the Liberals and the NDP are getting together and we will have their support until June of 2025. Now, we were kind of talking amongst ourselves. What does this mean exactly? Because some people are referring to this as a coalition. Some are saying no, and the Prime Minister called it just an arrangement, if you will, between these two parties. What does this mean?
Well, they keep talking about an agreement, but it would have been fun to see an actual agreement, something in writing. Instead, we had a press conference by Mr. Trudeau and a statement out of his office with a bunch of things written down. Most of them are conditional. Many of them are aspirational. A couple of them are concrete. For example, an insurance program to help kids get care for their teeth. So a dental program starting with younger people by the end of this year. Good stuff. Also, a clear promise that will be very popular with organized labor that clearly comes out of the NDP to finally have anti-scab legislation federally, something that exists in most provinces, but that the feds have never had. So this is good stuff. But there's only a couple of things in there. All the rest of it, the big ones like climate change, nothing. All aspirational. We're going to continue doing what we're doing. Well, the problem is what we're doing is put us at the worst. We are the worst performers in the G7 on greenhouse gases. So there's nothing in there for the NDP. And I talked to one of the most senior people who had worked with Jack Layton for many, many years. I just said, look, what's your take? Would Jack have gone along with this? And he said, what, for over 3 years? To back the Liberals based on this? No, he wouldn't have done that. And Mr. Singh kept saying, well, Jack did the same thing. He got some housing money. He beat up Paul Martin a bit and got money out of him, which is true. By supporting his budget, he said, well, we'll change some of the priorities and we'll move the money here and there. But that was a one-off for a budget. It wasn't saying that we're going to keep your party in power for 3 years. And there's an electoral and ethical problem with the whole approach, which is essentially Mr. Trudeau got less than 1/3 of the votes that Canadians cast in the last election. Now he's going to have 100% of the power for a full mandate. And a lot of people are having trouble wrapping their heads around that.
Okay, but this is not, when you say an actual deal, show me an agreement. My impression, Tom, is that, the NDP can walk away from this if and when they want based on, what they get or don't get from the Liberals, right?
Absolutely, but that's always the case.
Yeah.
They're a freestanding political party, and they can do what they want. But this is being sold. They're never using the word coalition because the coalition was what we tried in 2008. You remember when Jack Layton and Stéphane Dion held a famous press conference with Gilles Duceppe, which turned out to be a fateful error. Because there was a document from that with all three signatures on it, and that was bandied about and waved in especially the Liberals' faces by Stephen Harper for years after. And I think that that's why the brain trust around Trudeau said, we have a very bad memory of jointly signed documents and joint press conferences, because it would have been interesting and one would have thought quite easy, given the fact that they've become best friends forever, or at least for the next few years, for Singh and Trudeau to show up at the same press conference. But I have a feeling that a lot of people recall how badly that went for the Liberals at the time. And so there was this bizarre situation where you had separate press releases, separate press conferences, but still talking about an agreement that, of course, usually implies some sort of document that they both signed that nobody's seen hide nor hair of, as far as I know so far.
So, Tom, some people are saying this is the beginning of the end for the NDP. Do you agree with that?
It's going to be extraordinarily difficult for Mr. Singh to go back to the electorate in the fall of 2015 and say, those Liberals, what a bunch of bums. Don't vote for them, vote for me. Mm-hmm. And the average voter on the doorstep is going to say, but you're the one who's been propping them up for 3.5 years. So you're going to have something a lot more solid to show than what was in there. And I keep going back to climate change because it's something that Singh scored quite heavily on. He put Trudeau on the defensive during the last election campaign. He scored well. Trudeau did a brilliant job of pulling out lots of experts to pick apart the NDP's plan. They weren't even in power, but it didn't matter. They were saying, that's not very realistic. There's not enough in there, blah, blah, blah. They fought back gamely, and it was basically a draw at the end of the day. But a lot of people did take note of the fact that Singh had scored well and proved that Trudeau talks a good game on climate change, but had done really nothing. So here, I'm looking at the paper. We'll try to do this, and we'll continue to maybe try to work on that, and we'll come up with a plan. Look, something as concrete as whether or not you abolish subsidies to oil and gas companies. That's black or white. You either do or you don't abolish the subsidies. Canada gives lots of subsidies to oil and gas companies, to people producing fossil fuels. That's something that the International Energy Agency has made countries like Canada promise for years to get rid of. We've promised to get rid of them. We still haven't done it. You know what the deal says? It says we're going to continue to work to develop a plan to try to get rid of subsidies. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't say anything. 3 years from now, Trudeau could say, I'm still working on a plan, and nobody would be able to say he broke the deal.
So I have a little clip here. This is Candice Bergen. She's the interim leader, of course, of the federal Conservatives. Just listen to this clip because I thought at the end this seemed a bit much to me. Brian?
The NDP are in charge. What does this mean? Well, it means the decimation of Canadian oil and gas and LNG, which we know this more than ever. That means that is really a way to prop up Putin and Russia.
I'm sorry, what?
Please.
Really?
That's called swinging for the fences. And by the way, this is the behaving version of Candice Bergen, because if you missed what she came out with last night, you missed an epic in Canadian political history. It was so outrageously over the top. I mean, this, saying that, the NDP is helping Trudeau prop up Putin. I mean, that's chump change compared to what she said last night. Look, Bergen is starting to embarrass her party, and some of them are starting to realize it because I talked to them. I mean, the whole bit about Stornoway and the $20,000 move and pushing, giving poor O'Toole and his family the bum's rush to get them out as quickly as they could. And then last week, out of the blue, she decides that she's in favor of a no-fly zone, even though everybody in NATO, from the chief commander of NATO to every single member, has said, no, we don't want a fighting war between NATO and Russia because we know that means the beginning of the Third World War. No problem for Candice Bergen. She wants that war. And then by the weekend, she had softened as she goes. She only wants a no-fly zone over the humanitarian corridors, as if you could get that specific in shooting down Russian airplanes or not. So it made no sense. And her stuff today, again, she's just completely out of her league. And I think that it's probably the best advertisement that they needed to convince Conservative members, look, get on with the membership race and choose a new leader, who, by the way, is going to be their sixth leader in 7 years. That's not a great record.
Tom, is it wrong to call this decision today, this agreement, a masterstroke for the Liberals?
Oh, it is a masterstroke for the Liberals. And it's exactly this type of masterstroke, deep experience, ability, that has kept them in power for most of Confederation. I mean, think about what Trudeau just got. He was handed a minority government where we would have had to try to always accommodate and work with and listen to other people in the House. He gets a backing from a third party that says, we're keeping you in power from now until the next election. I mean, what could be better? He's going to be heading off. He's probably going to have a headache when he leaves for Brussels tomorrow, because I suspect he might have a drink or two tonight to celebrate the fact that he was just able to
pull this off. Yeah.
Should they just merge once and for all?
Well, that's, of course, that's the worst thought for anybody in the NDP. If you really want to insult somebody in the NDP, tell them that they're the conscience of Parliament, which is what the Liberals used to always say. You guys are just Liberals in a hurry. Liberals in a hurry with a conscience. That's quite something, because you guys don't have one. But I mean, that was it all the time. They're just saying, well, we understand the reality of politics. Politics is the art of the possible. You can't do this stuff as fast as you want all the time. That sort of thing, And I think that this one is going to hurt Singh's brand really long term. I can't understand how he was able to get this thing, the way it is drafted, past his caucus, and we'll see what actually happens.
Okay. I want to ask you one last thing. We're going to run out of time here. So Jean Charest in the race. Now he's got to sit around for 3 years. What does this mean? Does this change anything?
Well, it does. That's a great point that you're raising, because, of course, they're all thinking, the average length, and this is actually a historical fact, the average length of a minority government is 18 months. So you can see, let's get through the leadership and then maybe through a fall session. Charest won't even be in the House, of course, if he were to win, because he's not elected. So, you could see him going across the country trying to set things up for maybe, a spring election or something like that. But now, somebody like Charest, who's turning 64 in June, is looking at another 3 years without even being in the House, and very little chance of getting elected to the House during that time, because he'd have to find somebody in a safe Conservative seat to give up their seat to let him run, which good luck with that. So, I mean, it's going to directly play into the Conservative leadership race, no question about that. One of the big winners, Pierre Poilievre, who gets to scream out the loudest, I told you so you've ever heard. Yeah. This is the Liberals. They're turning hard left. They've gone nuts. Look at them. They're signing this deal with the socialists, and they're trying to help Putin, So No, it's a big win for the Liberals, no question.
So my conspiracy theory question to you, Tom, is speaking of Jean Charest, you think this deal worked out between Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh was designed once they found out Jean Charest was thinking of getting in the race and this was a way to ice him?
Well, you know what? They're that good, the Liberals. You can be sure. I'm not sure it was 50% of the thinking, but it was probably 15% of the thinking. Somebody just piping up and saying, and by the way, this will make life a lot harder, for Charest, because it's not sure at all that he'd want to sit around for a few years. So I do know, because I was talked to by somebody close to Charest who was sort of sniffing around. Charest has been trying to wonder what the different plays are with the NDP and so forth. I have a feeling that Charest got just enough experience that he probably saw something like this on the horizon and was concerned about it.
Interesting
times, no question about that. Tom, I got no seconds left. Quebec budget. What'd you think? Anything surprise you here out of the budget?
No, they're going to try to buy votes with people's own money. Okay. Everybody got $500, yay! And that adds $3 billion to just last year's deficit.
Yeah.
But this is an election year, so I guess we should have expected an electoral budget.